Welcome to Activestills exhibition here at the Hariko Center in Luxembourg. The exhibition is organized in collaboration with the Comité pour un pays juste au Proche-Orient. My name is Haidi. I'm a photographer and video artist and working with the Activestills collective for the last year. The collective has been working since 2005. And here at the exhibition we are trying to show different projects and the ongoing work of Activestills in Palestine, Israel. The exhibition is spread over several floors. Here at the entrance, at the first floor, we are exhibiting a bit an introduction of Activestills' work, of the forming of the collective, how it started, and also the way it works. In the next floors you will see both ongoing projects, such as different forms of resistance taking place in Palestine, Israel, as well as the daily life under the Israeli occupation. And also we are exhibiting here several specific projects, such as the Checkpoint project, Facebook arrest projects, and Obliterated Families projects. So let's start the tour. The collective was actually formed around the weekly protests taking place in the West Bank, in the village of Bil'in. People in Bil'in started to arrange weekly protests against the occupation and against the separation wall that was planned to cut part of the lands of their village. These protests were soon joined by Israeli activists as well as international activists. And these photographers who are today Activestills were taking part in these protests. They were going there every week and documenting the protests, and soon started to gather lots of materials. And they realized that they don't have any place to show them. I mean, the mainstream media was not and is not interested in showing those images. The group was actually formed around the idea of creating some kind of a platform. So here we can see the beginning of the work of Activestills, photographs from the village of Bil'in. Before the wall was even built, you can see the settlements at the background growing. Today they are much bigger, and you can see the activists as well as people from the village protesting, and the soldiers who comes to suppress these protests. It's important to mention that Palestinians living in the West Bank are living under the occupation, under the military law. And under that law, any protest or gathering is condemned illegal. The basic right that we have as Israelis in Israel to protest, to gather, to say what we think is not allowed for them. So as they are illegal, they are very often dispersed in very violent means. And it is kind of a routine that every Friday the people are marching towards either the wall or where the wall is supposed to be, and there are the soldiers. Sometimes they're already waiting inside the village, but sometimes today it's behind the wall, because today they're already a big wall, so they are there waiting with the tear gas, with the rubber bullets, which are actually like steel coated with rubber, and they use also live ammunition. So once they were starting to gather all these materials and they realized they don't have where to show it, they decided simply to put that images in the Israeli public space, in the streets, in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, in Haifa, in the cities, and to bring those images to the middle of the Israeli public. And the way they did it was to go by night, a small group of people, put the images on the wall. As you can see here, we always print the images on simple A3 paper, which is cheap to do. We often put them in a grid, creates a larger image altogether, which is more visible from the far. And these images from the protests in the West Bank were brought to the heart of the Israeli cities to show them for the Israeli public. And here at the first floor we can see some documentation of those street exhibitions. The group didn't only put the images there and that's it, but part of the activity was also to go back there the next day or after a few days and to see what happened with those images. And what happens often is that there are lots of comments by the passerbys, and very often they are destroyed or erased or marked with some written comments on them. As you can see here, this is an exhibition in 2007 exhibited in Haifa, and the next day it was completely erased. And the big image here of the woman is a woman from Walaja whose house was destroyed, and it was one of the images in one of the street exhibitions, and you can see that again this mark who some passerby felt the need to erase it or to comment on it. And these kind of comments are actually part of the work, and the documentation of the process of these street exhibitions is part of the Activestills collective. I mean, we see the reaction to these photos and images as part of the work. We are evoking this kind of reaction with the work, which is part of why we do what we do. We want to bring the images that people don't want to see to them. They have to face them in one way or another, and this is very often the reaction. It evokes like very violent and very destructive feelings apparently in people. The next floors we have like more specific projects. So we see ourselves as photographers, but also as protesters that actively takes part in this protest, and we are documenting protests taking place in the West Bank, but also inside 48 in Israel. And here we see a grid of photos as we are showing them also in the streets. We wanted to show them also here in the space. The resistance takes different forms, and we are documenting and participating in different forms of resistance. You can see at the photo at the upright corner, it's a photo of Bassem, who was living in Bil'in and taking part very actively in the protests. And then you can see him again there at the poster, the same photo. And this is very often it's the tragic stories behind the photos that are used again, because in this case Bassem was killed by soldiers during a protest. And this photo that was taken before was used after to commemorate his death and his activity. So here you can see the same photo as a poster on his house next to his mother and his brother. We continue to the next floor. Here we have a project called Commuting Through Israeli Checkpoints. It's a project we have been working for some months with two other photographers of the collective. And it's a project about Palestinian workers who are crossing the Green Line every morning on their way to work, which means that they have to go through checkpoints. There are about 11 checkpoints on the area along the Green Line where Palestinian workers can cross. They need to have a permit in order to cross and to work in Israeli and other Palestinian cities in 48, which means that their way to work is very long. The checkpoints usually opens at around 4 o'clock in the morning, meaning that many people leave home at the early morning hours, or even some goes to the checkpoints and sleep there, waiting for them to open, as to be the first ones there to pass quickly and arrive to their workplaces on time. For many, this means also long distances. People coming from cities in the West Bank, they take the time to get to the checkpoints, and then at the checkpoints, depending on the amount of people, it can take hours. It can take from half an hour to a few hours that you spend standing in line, going through the security check. We have been documenting 3 checkpoints till now, and the plan is to document all of them. This installation combines still images and 2 videos. One of the videos is the interviews with workers that we did on the different checkpoints. One of the important works of Activestills, as I see it, is to show things that are not shown in the mainstream media. And these images are something that, for me, I didn't. Only when I saw them there with my eyes, it was the first time that I saw it. It's something that hardly exists in the mainstream media. It's things that you hardly see, and at the same, it touches many people. I mean, we are talking about thousands of people who are crossing these checkpoints every morning, and it's completely absent from the public visual sphere, so to say. We will continue now to the last floor. And on the way, you can see here some more images from the resistances, different forms of resistance. And here again an example of photos used by the communities. It's a tragic story of another person, Mustafa Tamimi from Nabi Salah, who was killed also during a demonstration by an Israeli soldier. And photo taking of him used again to commemorate him and his death. He was behind the jeep of the soldiers. Someone just opened, it was from very close range, so they just opened the door and someone shot him directly and he was injured and killed. The way the daily life looks like, as you see from this grid, well, we have again the checkpoints here. It's also Bethlehem, where people are climbing in order to get further in the line. At the right corner up, we can see the way people are crossing the wall when they don't have permits and when they don't go through the checkpoints. So there are different places that is possible to climb. It's dangerous, of course, if you get caught, but still many people are doing this also on a daily basis. Palestinians in the West Bank are living under occupation and under a military law, meaning that they go to the military court. So I would like to emphasize also that the system in the West Bank is really like two parallel worlds existing at the same time. Me as an Israeli, if I get arrested, let's say, in a demonstration taking place in one of the villages in the West Bank, I will go to the civil court and I will have the right to see a lawyer, and I will have to go in front of a judge within 24 hours. At the same place, at the same time, a Palestinian gets arrested, he will go to the military court, and he very often won't see any lawyer, and very often he can be kept for days and months and even for years without going through a court process. It's called administrative detention, which enables basically the army to arrest people and keep them without going through any trial. And in addition to this administrative detention, the condition of the prisoners, the Palestinian prisoners in Israeli prisons, are also quite horrible. And there are from time to time like these waves of protests. And one of the ways to protest is a hunger strike. Here it's an exhibition in 2012 in support of the prisoners' hunger strike. And in this case you can see also people trying to tear them down, but also people who have written text over the images. There, for example, someone wrote, "That's it, you only catch him." Next to it, there is the posters of a hunger striking prisoner, and someone wrote over it, "So when will he be dead?" And here, someone in the hospital, and next to it, someone wrote, "That's it, is he only injured?" And now we enter the last space of the exhibition. We have one part dedicated to Gaza, one for one wall about Jerusalem, and one wall, a project of two of the collective photographers, Oren and Faiz, about Facebook arrests, people who were arrested because of their Facebook posts. Here you can see the work of Ez Zanoun, Palestinian photographer living in Gaza. Ez has been working with the collective for some years and documenting the life and the constant offensives on Gaza. And his works has been shown in different places, but he himself is not allowed to leave Gaza. And in the video that you can see here, he's talking about the life in Gaza as well as his work as a photographer. He's trying to explain a bit how it is to live there. He says that freedom is something that is in our head, but as we know that he cannot really live, he's forced to stay there, it makes his words even stronger in a way. We have here also photographs by Anne Paq, who has been going in and out from Gaza the last years and documenting the last 3 offensives. During 7 years there have been 3 major offensives, Israeli military operations on Gaza, causing lots of death and destruction. So we have here on one side images showing in between offensives. It is not really after in Gaza. There is always like in between. There is always the fear of the next attack. There is always a constant insecurity. And here we have another project, specific project about Gaza called Obliterated Families. It's a project of Anne Paq and Palestinian Polish journalist Ala Kandil. They went back again to Gaza after the last Israeli offensive in 2014 to document Gaza and how it looked after that. And the numbers were like frightening. The numbers of people killed, thousands of people killed, most of them were civilians, and over 500 children who were killed during that offensive. In the Israeli side, there were about 80 people who were killed, and most of them were soldiers. The project of Obliterated Families is documenting families who lost more than 3 members at one single attack. Some even lost 3 generations at one attack. For Anne and Ala, it was important to try to show what is behind the numbers that we hear all the time and that is hard to understand, the number of people killed. So they went and visited 53 families who had lost many members. And when they started to think how to present all of that, they decided to concentrate on 10 families, and they made a web documentary where you can see and read about the stories of these families. And you can see here Ala Balata looking at the photos of the members of his family who were killed. Ala lost all of his family, and he was saved by chance because he wasn't at home during that attack. An important part of the project is the photos of photos, to try to visualize a bit the amount of persons who were killed and to show the life that was stopped in a moment. In the photos of photos, you can see all the members of one family killed, and you can read the stories shortly, short descriptions of the stories of each family. The next project here is Post in Translation. It's about Facebook arrests. It's a project of Oren Ziv and Faiz Abu Amle. All the people here you can see were arrested because of posts they wrote on Facebook. Most of them, almost all of them, were arrested by Israeli authorities. There is one case of Isa who was arrested by the Palestinian authorities. Also for a Facebook post he wrote criticizing the Palestinian Authority. And here we have the last wall of the last but not least wall, where we show our ongoing work documenting Jerusalem. The big photo that you can see here is again an example of the use of our photos by the communities. It's in Sheikh Jarrah, in East Jerusalem, a neighborhood where already in 2008 there were lots of protests against house evictions of Palestinians and the growing amount of settlements inside the East Jerusalem neighborhoods and also around Jerusalem. This was a short tour in Activestills exhibition in Luxembourg, where we tried to show our work over the last 10 years. Thank you for joining us for the tour.
شو الكلام؟